What is going on, everyone? This is the Fourth in Fantasy podcast. I'm your host, Meek. I'm here with my co-host, Wu.
What's going on?
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, we're finishing up our year in review series today. We're talking tight ends. Before I get into that, of course, just wanted to give a shout out to all of you who listen, watch. We've hit 200 plus plays on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Let's keep this thing going, ladies and gentlemen. We love creating content for you. Seems like you guys love watching it, so let's keep the good times rolling.
Absolutely, it's been a really fun learning process for me and you. It's cool to see, again, that support online. So definitely keep it up.
I was gonna say, just even the idea of like starting a podcast was like a daunting
100%.
kind of task. Like there's so much planning that you and I had before going into it, and it's great to see that people love it. So let's keep it going.
Yeah.
So make sure you follow us on all of our socials: Twitter at Fourth and Fantasy Pod, Instagram and TikTok at Fourth and Fantasy, YouTube is Fourth and Fantasy. Just search us and you'll find us on the video format like you're seeing today. A couple things, quick thing we want to talk about. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the Dynasty season. One of the big reasons why we started this podcast was, because of Dynasty, and Wu and I thought, why not hop into a Dynasty league and give you guys, firsthand, experience of someone starting from startup to going on. Like obviously in episodes past we've talked about we're in a dynasty league already and redraft, but we thought let's hop in a dynasty league.
Yeah, shout out my guy Kyle. I was with him a few weeks ago and he said he was starting up a league, so I was like, oh, me and Meek need to get in this right now. So yeah, it'll definitely be really cool to the dynasty league we're about 3 or 4 years in already, so It'll be cool to see that beginning process, and also be good for me personally because it gives me another chance to kind of start from scratch and try a new strategy if I want.
Of course. Yeah, so the name of the league, obviously we're going to shout this league out as the year goes on and we talk about dynasty startups. We're going to probably do some startup mocks here on the show for you ladies and gentlemen, but so the name of the league is called The Dynasty. It's a 12-team half PPR tight end premium league. 1 quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 3 flex, and a super flex. So the league that Wu and I reference a lot is a super flex league as well. So another super flex league we're in. The thing I like about this league though is obviously the bench is deep. That's kind of what you want to see in a dynasty league, but also 5 IR spots, 4 taxi squad spots. You love to see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, as the year progresses, we'll talk about this league more and more. Obviously as the draft progresses, we'll share in any information that, we get, or anything that, transpires, during the year that is definitely pertinent to this podcast. But, before we do that, or before we get into the meat and potatoes of the episode, we're going to talk about our quick question of the day. Quick question of the day is 2025 excitement. Who's one player that you're excited, or players that you're excited for in 2025 that we have not talked about in our year in review series?
Yeah, I have a couple names down here. One of them I've talked about previously, so I'll just mention it quick and kind of go on to the next one. Travis Etienne. If you haven't seen the clip, check out the Instagram. I got my whole spiel on that. So yeah, he's a name I'm looking at. Another one I like is Brandon Ayuk. He goes down early with that injury. We're starting to hear, or actually I don't think it's rumors anymore. I think Debo was given the ability to look for a trade.
Yeah, he's asking for a trade.
Yeah, so we could see Debo leaving, and Ayuk. He was already that guy to begin with in that offense. The beginning of the year, or the games that he played this year, wasn't what you were really looking for, especially after he gets that big bag and all that money. They're invested in this guy. So I'm still high on Ayuk. I like him a lot. That San Fran offense is always going to be dynamic, and I think Purdy's definitely someone who can support someone like Ayuk and make him a top fantasy option. So I do really like Ayuk going into next year. And then my last name that I think I'm starting to like a lot, and I think I've seen his name getting a lot of buzz recently, Xavier Worthy for the Chiefs.
Nice.
Yeah, so we've talked about this in previous episodes with pretty much any rookie, but specifically rookie wide receivers, is after the bye how much more involved they are in the offense, and you saw that this year. He wasn't like blowing up your fantasy numbers, so it's not like this is like a home run guy, but anytime you were tied to a talent like Patrick Mahomes, and he is very flexible in terms of, he gets rushing attempts. So that's something I like a lot to see from a receiver. He's a dynamic playmaker. He can make things happen. He's super quick. You see him get a lot more involved late in the year. Last three, our fantasy playoffs, 11 targets, 9 targets. He's getting 3 carries, 2 carries, scored a couple times on the ground. And then, even in, the NFL playoffs, he was getting a lot of targets. So that's what I like to see. So Xavier Worthy's the name I'm looking at.
I like that. So I also have a couple of options that I put on our sheet. First one I won't go into in depth. You can check out my clip on Bryce Young on our Instagram. Very high on Bryce Young going into 2025. Especially with the potential of adding another wide receiver like Teteroa and McMillan, because the Panthers have the number 8 pick in the draft, and I see them going receiver. That would be great. But my other two ones, first one is Puka Nacua. And, Puka Nacua is definitely someone, you felt burned by him. He had an awful week 1 and then was out with the knee injury for weeks 2 through 7. But I do want to point out, when he came back, he only gave you 2 bad weeks. And then every week after that, he was a top 21 receiver or higher. Cooper Kupp now leaves Los Angeles. Puka Nacua is the only show in town. And I could totally see Stafford, hyper targeting him.
And he already did as it was.
Right, and he already did as it was. So could you imagine, like, now without Kupp, like the targets he gets, which is insane.
Yep.
And then my other one that I want to talk about is Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker, is someone that, if you had him, you probably felt burnt by him.
I did.
Yeah, right. So you definitely felt burnt by him. But you look at his box scores, and most times than not, he's giving you RB1, RB2 performance, and he doesn't sink you. Yes, he gets hurt a lot, and I totally understand like the pain from that. But Kenneth Walker's a dog. He's a straight dog, and I expect with Clint Kubiak coming in and being the offensive coordinator in this offense, they're going to run it just like San Francisco. And, you look at San Francisco's offense with McCaffrey, or even when McCaffrey's out, Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell, Isaac Guerrero, whoever that running back is a stud. Now, it's not a 1-for-1 San Francisco to, Seattle, but the building blocks are there.
Absolutely.
And I could see Kenneth Walker being someone that I am targeting next year in 2025 drafts due to that scheme.
I see the vision.
Yeah. So those are a couple of options for you to keep your eye out going forward in our as we get into 2025. But, we're going to wrap up 2024 this year, ladies and gentlemen, with our tight end finishes. We're just going to give you tight ends 12-1. Obviously, when we talk about our year in review, we're going to give you where they finished, where they were drafted as, their fantasy points, their stats, where they finished in the first half of the year versus the second half of the year, and then just give you some insights on, what we're thinking about this player, and, are we targeting them? Are we trying to get away from them as we move into 2025 and beyond? So before we do that, I'm going to talk about framing the tight end class or tight end group.
It's not as fun as it used to be.
It's not. It really isn't. But, we have to talk about it. Well, tight ends suck. I'm just going to come out and say it. If you unless you had someone in the top 3 to 4 tight end group, you hated your life. And you were probably streaming tight ends for most of the year, but Will, you put this in the doc, and I really appreciate it. But the top 12 tight end points per game over the last 10 years, I'm just going to read them off to you. 13.1, 13.7, 12.2, 11.6, 11.9, 12.7, 12, 12.3, 11.4, 11.9, 12.2. Right, so we're in the dumpsters of tight end, and that's why some people enjoy doing tight end premium leagues, like the dynasty league that we're joining as a tight end premium league. It gives more value to tight ends, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, real quick, like going back to those numbers from the last 10 years, when I was looking at this, from 2014 to 2024, It's really like a 1 point per game difference, which doesn't seem like a lot, and it isn't. But what I was noticing when I was looking at those top like 4 to 5 or 3 tight ends, the ones that you're spending a lot on, or maybe they just had a big year, their points per game were just so much higher than the rest. Like there was that huge separation, and then as the years went on, there really wasn't as much separation compared to those earlier years.
Yeah, and listen, tight ends do suck. I will repeat it again, but it's tight end is in a very interesting position going forward. You're starting to see the studs of old really start to decline. Obviously we'll talk about Travis Kelce. Somehow, some way, Zach Ertz made his way into this list. But there's a new guard of tight ends coming in, right? Obviously like Brock Bowers, Trey McBride. We'll talk about Sam Laporta, and then. We haven't got into it yet, but there are some rookies that are coming in too that may shift this tight end landscape. So, tight ends suck currently, but I am feeling very hopeful with the combination of young talent and incoming rookies that could reshape this landscape.
I agree. I think the arrow is pointing up.
Absolutely. So let's kick it off, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go with our tight end 12. Mr. Hunter Henry of the New England Patriots. Hunter Henry was drafted as the tight end 22, finishes as the tight end 12, 145 fantasy points, 66 receptions on 97 targets, 674 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6.95 yards per target, 10.21 yards per catch. First half of the year, he was the tight end 8. Second half of the year, he was the tight end 15. Definitely a rough year for someone like Hunter Henry. Me as a Chargers fan, I am still burned by him leaving, after Justin Herbert's rookie year, but I won't get into it. But you wish he got more involved with Drake May in the second half of the year. And obviously the first half of the year was very promising, but, you were hoping that, he got in with, Drake May, build a rapport, and that just kind of never happened. Listen, 97 targets is not bad.
Not
you know
all.
what I mean? Like that's kind of phenomenal for a tight end like Hunter Henry. But what do you got for Hunter Henry?
Yeah, the thing that kind of sucks with him was the low amount of red zone targets because when you're tight ends, when you're in the red zone, you're obviously trying to run the ball, but when you have a bigger frame guy, like you can throw those high point balls and get somebody open in the back of the end zone, and to see that his targets were pretty low. I mean, the Patriots weren't really in the red zone a ton to begin with, so I get that, but that's something you wish to see was higher. Also, their wide receiver room is just terrible.
Yeah.
So you would have liked to see Hunter Henry really step in and be May's number one guy. And it was kind of there, but not really. Like we said, 97 targets isn't bad, but I think it was also like the quality of targets. But yeah, what's good about Hunter Henry for the future is they bring in Josh McDaniels. We've seen him be really successful. I think there's this guy named like Gronk or something. So he's had success in the past with tight ends. Obviously, Gronk and Hunter Henry are on completely different planes, but just the usage rate is what we're looking at.
Absolutely. And we were talking about this before we started to hit record on the show, and we were talking about cap space, and New England is, top in the league. I think they have $123 million in cap space to spend. So, they are going to be big spenders. You hope that they don't, spend for like a T. Higgins or a Chris Godwin that's immediately going to take targets away. Maybe they go the rookie wide receiver route, which would be a little bit more promising for Hunter Henry because then, he's an established piece. And, obviously later on down the year, that rookie wide receiver gets worked in. But, maybe the first half of the year you get to stream someone like Hunter Henry, maybe trade him and get some value before, that rookie really comes on.
Yeah, I don't know if like in redraft if Hunter Henry is someone really I'm like, maybe I'll get him late.
Yeah, no.
But he's not someone like, oh man, I got Hunter Henry from my draft. Like I'm set. Like he's a streaming option for me.
Exactly. And most of these guys that in the bottom half of the 12 that we talk about, these are guys you're probably going to get on on waivers, or if not like the last round of your redraft league. Obviously there are some exceptions, but just kind of keep that in mind as we go along. And then the last thing I just want to point out with Hunter Henry is that in order for him really to be successful next year, Drake May needs to take a step forward, you know what I mean, and really become not a prolific passer, but a good enough passer that is able to support multiple pieces.
Yeah, and what we saw from the Patriots this year is they were down in a lot of games. So, in second halves, all they're doing is throwing the ball. So,
Right.
that's another thing to think about is if there's plenty of people out there that are telling me that, the Patriots are going to be relevant next year and they think
We'll
Drake
see.
May is the guy. Cover your ears, but I don't think that's the case. And that's besides the point. But when you're down in games and you need to air out the ball, that helps in like a season like this with Hunter Henry. I don't know if that's something that's going to happen next year. So
delicious garbage time.
Exactly.
We're going to move into our tight end 11. Tight end 11 is David Njoku. Was drafted as the tight end 11, finishes as the tight end 11. 149 fantasy points, 64 receptions on 97 targets, 505 yards, 5 touchdowns, 5.21 yards per target, and 7.89 yards per catch. First half of the year, he was the tight end 16. Second half of the year, he was the tight end 8. And this is another product of, you see sustained success after the Deshaun Watson injury. 23% target share is phenomenal to see. I will say that Njoku was definitely hurt the first half of the year, so he wasn't around a lot for Watson. But in the second half of the year, with the combination of DTR and Jameis Winston, he finally did come on. Definitely a letdown year from what you wanted from David Njoku. You really thought that he was building that rapport with Watson and was taking that step forward, and obviously he gets hurt, Watson gets hurt, and it's just shambles of a season.
Yeah, so he was drafted as the tight end 11. He finished as the tight end 11, which is great, whatever. But when I remember like going into redraft and I'm seeing his name and I was like the 10th to like 8th round, that kind of range. Like when you're seeing that name there, you're not drafting him because, I want to get the tight end 11 here and I'm happy he finished as the tight end 11. That's not the case. You were hoping that he could get up into that top 7 because it's the upside potential. It just wasn't there.
Absolutely. We look at David Njoku, and he's only 28 years old. The question mark is, can he stay healthy for a full season? And I'm looking at his box scores or his yearly finishes. Like obviously this year he only played 11 games. Last year he played 16. He was the tight end 6. 2022 he was the tight end 13. He only played 14 games. So that's kind of really the big question mark. The youth is, future outlook going forward, the youth is still there, but can we get this guy a steady QB? You know what I mean? Who knows? Last episode, we were talking about wide receivers, and I did mention to Wu that maybe a potential option for Cleveland is to go after Aaron Rodgers. That could be someone that kind of sustains him to, going forward. I don't know.
Yeah, Rodgers made Tyler Conklin relevant in a few games this past year. So Njoku's obviously more talented than Conklin, so that would be a good fit.
Right. Yeah. So we'll see. Moving into tight end 10. Our tight end 10 is Mr. Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers. Tucker Kraft was drafted as the tight end 37, finishes as the tight end 10. So there's your return on value right there. 162 fantasy points, 50 receptions on 70 targets, 707 yards, 7 touchdowns, 10.1 yards per target, 14.14 yards per catch. First half, he was the tight end 6 on the back of his tight end 1 and tight end 2 performance. And then the second half, he was the tight end 17. What is there really to say about Tucker Kraft? He's a great talent. I see him a lot in that Sam Laporta like purgatory where, in that offense, there's just so many mouths to feed that, it's hard to rely on someone like Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, there was a lot of dud weeks where he's putting up less than 5 fantasy points. He did it 5 times. There was a week where he had 0 points on 1 target. Like that's just, you can't have that, especially as a streaming option on a good offense. You're hoping to try and get to like 7 to 10 points and you're happy with it. Maybe he scores a touchdown.
But then he gives you weeks like, weeks 4 and 5 where he's the tight end 2 with 14 points, the tight end 1 in week 5 with 22 points. Like it's there, like he can do it. It's just not consistent at all.
Right. We'll see what happens with Christian Watson. He tore his ACL. Do they add another receiver in the draft or free agency, to try and get that number 1 guy for Love? But I would just really like to see Kraft be that like safety net guy for Love, but I don't know. We haven't seen it enough.
Would you be willing to acquire Tucker Kraft?
So it's interesting you bring that up because he was a name last year around the deadline. When I was talking to a manager, we weren't talking about Kraft. Like Kraft had nothing to do with.
It was an extra piece. Right?
It was an extra piece because my tight ends weren't that great. Although we'll talk about another guy later that helped me out, but it was a name. I think he wanted like a first round pick or a second round pick, and to me, like especially since we're not playing in a tight end premium league, I'm not giving up picks for a tight end. Especially if his name isn't George Kittle or at this point I wouldn't even do Travis Kelce, but like a Brock Bowers or Laporta. Like if it's not one of those names, I'm not throwing you a pick.
Yeah. I'm looking at keep trade cut and some of the trades that are being made. It looks like Kraft is going for. There's one that was done today. Kraft for the 203 in this year's rookie draft.
I'm out on that.
Or the 204.
I give you a third.
Yeah,
third and a high five. How about that?
Third and a high five is what Wu's got. He's not in on Tucker Kraft.
It's not so much that I'm not in on Tucker Kraft, but like just the tight end, like we mentioned, like it's just the tight end position as a whole.
Yeah.
My thing with Tucker Kraft though is he's in a really good situation, so that's kind of where my positivity for him comes. But again, it's a tight end position.
Right. All right, we're gonna move on to our tight end number 9, Mr. Pat Freiermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pat Freiermuth drafted as the tight end 15, finished as the tight end 9. 165 fantasy points, 65 receptions on 78 targets, 653 yards, 7 touchdowns, not bad. 8.37 yards per target, 10.05 yards per catch. First half he was the tight end 20. Second half he was the tight end 11. And you definitely saw a spotty year from Pat Freiermuth, the Muth as some people like to call him. First half of the year was just kind of awful, you know what I mean? Like tight end 16, tight end 17, tight end 28 one week. And the promising thing was, the following, or after the bye, he really started to come on. He had a couple of, really decent weeks, tight end 8, tight end 5, tight end 4. You saw Russ really start to incorporate him in the offense. And there were, some weeks where he had some really good, some target usage. Week 13, he had 7 targets. Week 18, he gets 11 targets. But, I don't know what there is for Pat Freiermuth going forward.
Yeah, he's someone I have on my dynasty roster, and I threw him in a couple weeks, but I wasn't really excited that I had to start him. Yeah. I was like, oh, maybe he scores a touchdown this week. And to be honest, that's kind of how I see the tight end position. Like, especially if you don't have one of those big names, you're really just hoping they score. It was good to see in the second half he was starting to get worked in and get more targets. But for Pittsburgh specifically, like, outside of Pickens, like you would kind of think he would be more involved, to begin with. So it's kind of upsetting that that's not really the case.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing too, like I just thought about it, is that like, yeah, he built this relationship with Russ, but Russ is a free agent. You know what I mean? So now it's like he's got to start from scratch all over again, unless they bring back, Russ or, Fields. And really, he didn't have a great relationship with Fields. But like, again, the positive spin here for Pat Freiermuth, he's only 26 years old.
Yeah, I thought he was older.
And like tight ends are like, they really don't hit their prime until late 20s, early 30s, and that's where you get to see some value. Like he was a highly touted prospect out of Penn State. Some people liked him more than Kyle Pitts. You know what I mean? So there's still potential there for him, but it's just unfortunate. You're probably going to have to sit and wait.
Yeah, and this was his best fantasy year. Like this is the most fantasy points he scored in the season. So like, I mean, hopefully he keeps getting better, but it's not someone I'm like dying to go after, especially with someone I have him on my team.
Exactly. All right, moving into our tight end 8, Mr. Sam Laporta. I am sorry for those of you who had him, Brandon McGrath. Drafted as the tight end 2, finishes as the tight end 8. 60 receptions on 83 targets, 726 yards, 7 touchdowns. He had 8.75 yards per target, 12.1 yards per catch, which is nice to see. First half of the year, he was the tight end 18, and if I could be a fly on the wall for anyone who is a Sam Laporta manager, I guarantee you're at DEFCON 5. Just panicking because, this was the tight end 1 last year. You know what I mean? Like granted, yes, he was a rookie and, no one really saw his game, but, you're drafting him. You drafted him as the tight end too, and he doesn't even finish there. So, it was definitely a disappointing season. But like we talked about, you know, previous with some other player. Oh, we were talking about with Tucker Kraft. Like he was the fourth option. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not sustainable for a tight end in fantasy football. You know what I mean? Obviously, defense was great in the first half, and they relied on the running game and their top targets of Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs. So like he really wasn't incorporated into the offense. But then you saw actually in the second half of the year, it was kind of like the Laporta you knew and loved and who you were drafting, because there were like upwards of like 10 defensive injuries, and then David Montgomery gets hurt too, so that's another option that gets taken away. So he had a good finish to the end of the season, tight end from week 13 to 17, tight end 8, 11, 1, 5, 6. That's really good. It was definitely good in the fantasy playoffs for you. But I don't know, Will, what do we feel about Sam Laporta?
Yeah, so he comes off that tight end one season, and he scores 10 touchdowns in that year, and it comes down to 7, so you kind of expected that a little bit. Again, it's an offense where there's just dudes all over the place, and he's not going to be one of those top tier guys when you got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Montgomery, and the list goes on. So it's something you have to kind of expect going into a year. Kind of like Tucker Kraft, a great situation. So it could be a lot worse. But for Laporta specifically, I like him more as a player than I do Kraft, so that's an even better sign. And he's a part of aggressive offense, and he's going to score touchdowns. That team puts up a lot of points, so it sucks that he was being drafted as a tight end too, and he doesn't get even close to that. But it's the upside that he brings. That's kind of the gamble you have to take. Are you fully expecting him? Are you willing to pay that top price? And how are you going to be able to adjust when you get burned?
Yeah, I'm trying to look ahead on Spot Track to see what the contract situations are for some of these options. Obviously 2025 for the Lions, they're pretty set with what they have. Obviously like Amon-Ra's still there and Jameson Williams, but in 2026, maybe Jameson Williams walks, and Monty's 2 years older, and maybe he kind of moves up the pecking order for you, where he becomes an interesting value. But I guess right now I was looking at Keep Trade Cut on kind of what Laporta was valued at, and he was valued at the 106. Is that something that interests you, Will, in going for Laporta?
Personally, no. I'm not huge on drafting tight ends early. I'm not huge on spending on tight ends. But that's just me personally. So yeah. If someone comes up with an argument, and they're willing to pay that 106, sure, I have no problem with that. Me personally, I would not. We'll see what happens. They have a new offensive coordinator now. Maybe the offense changes a little bit. I'll say it again. He's on an elite offense.
Yeah.
So if he's gonna be anywhere, you want him in Detroit. It brings that nice upside. They're gonna be aggressive. They're gonna score a lot of touchdowns. So he's very talented. I like him as a tight end. So it's just, how are you willing to spend what it costs and have to be cautious of getting burned.
Right. Yeah. Hang in there, Sam Laporta managers. Hopefully it works out for you.
But I think in the long run, he's not going to keep burning you like this.
No, he's only 24, so he's going to mature even more and hopefully step into that dominant role. But the vibes are low.
These are the conversations that we have to have because he finishes as the tight end 1. This is the scrutiny you're going to get.
Right. All right, we're going to move into the tight end 7, blast from the past, Mr. Zach Ertz. Drafted as the tight end 32, finishes the tight end 7, 176 fantasy points, 66 receptions on 91 targets, 654 yards, 7 touchdowns, 7.1 yard per target, 9.91 yard per catch. First half of the year, he was the tight end 12. Second half of the year, he was the tight end 9. This is definitely a year where you saw shades of old Zach Ertz, where when he was on Philly and he was a top 3, top 4 tight end. He in the second half of the year, he was Daniels' favorite target outside of McLaurin. He went to him often, and it really kind of showed in the box scores, right? Second half of the year, he had a tight end 10 finish, tight end 11 finish. championship week, he gave you the tight end 2. I don't know if this is something that you're going to see continue into next year. I think this is a good pat on the butt for, someone like Zach Ertz, and a good attaboy, but, I don't know what there really is for him going forward.
Yeah, it's not someone I'm like dying to go out and get, especially because of that age. If you have him,
yeah,
like let him ride. He's
34 years old, and the other thing is he's going to be free agent next year too. Yeah. So it's like, does Washington bring him back?
I think they easily could for cheap.
Right. Like, is it worth it? But they also invested in a rookie tight end last year that you didn't see much of, and people in the dynasty community are highly into Ben Sinnott. So who knows? Maybe they decide to let Zach Ertz walk to go to Ben Sinnott, or they may even draft a tight end. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know what Zach Ertz's value in 2025 is for you.
Yeah, if he stays with Washington, I guess I'm pretty happy, and he's still somebody I would be willing to start.
I guess that's best case scenario, right?
I don't really know. I don't know what the landscape is for the need of Zach Ertz with the rest of the league. So I think if he stays in Washington, cool. Like I'd be willing to play him. But other than that, like I couldn't even tell you another spot where I'm like, yeah, I would start Zach Ertz if he went there.
Right, exactly. All right, we're going to move into our tight end 6. We're starting to get in some good names now here. But tight end 6, Mr. Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews drafted as a tight end 4, finishes as the tight end 6. 189 fantasy points, 55 receptions on 69 targets, 673 yards, 11 touchdowns, 9.75 yards per target, 12.24 yards per catch. First half of the year, he was the tight end 11. Second half of the year, he was the tight end 7. Mark Andrews finished with 11 touchdowns, the highest in his career. I don't think it's necessarily a sticky stat, but
yeah,
that you definitely could see a regression coming. But man, if you were a Mark Andrews manager, the first 4 weeks, that probably scared the daylights out of you.
Yes, it should. You paid a pretty big price for it.
You paid a premium price, right, for the tight end 4, and he gives you 2.4 fantasy points, 7.100.
One target.
Yeah, it's just what was going on that first half of the year?
It was so weird. Likely kind of explodes onto the scene. He has that big game against Kansas City week 1, and you're like, oh no, like is this the changing of the guards? Like, what are we doing here? Like, likely, I think it was after week 1 or maybe even after week 2. Like, on the waiver wire, like he was the big fab spend. Like people were dropping bags on him.
It's so crazy you say like changing of the guard, because he's only 29 years old. It's not like he's like 30 plus like Zach Ertz, where he's like 34. It's like he's still got some football left in him.
That's why it was so like mind numbing.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe, because I do remember at the beginning of the year, he had gotten into that car accident. Maybe that he was more hurt from that car accident than he was really leading on, and that kind of affected his play style. But definitely you saw a healthier snap percentage in the second half of the year, which was a little more like kind of hopeful for you going forward. You hope that he gets more targets in the future, but I think I don't know if he's a free agent. I gotta double.
He's
check.
got one more year. But the thing I'm looking at right now that really scares me. So last year he only plays 10 games. This year he plays 17. He had only 8 more targets than he did last year.
Yeah.
So you play a full season, and so like 2022 he plays 15 games, tight end 4, 113 targets. So he's getting almost 40 less targets.
Yeah, which is scary.
Yeah, and especially when Lamar's got 4,000 something yards and 40 touchdowns, like that's concerning.
Yeah, and who knows going forward too, like the development or the continued development of Zay Flowers. Do they get another receiver in this Todd Monken offense, or in Derrick Henry's still there too? Like it's a little scary going forward.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like, when you see somebody of his caliber like have like a low year, like, oh, maybe I can go and buy this guy. To me, I don't know if I'm testing the waters on Mark Andrews. I think if you have him, you let it ride, unless somebody's like really after him.
Yeah,
I would let it go.
Would a change of scenery entice you to go for Mark Andrews, or do you think best what you're gonna get is him staying in Baltimore.
I mean, when you got Lamar as your quarterback, like that's kind of what you want.
Right. We'll see. Yeah, Keep Trade Cut has him being valued right now as the 206 right now. So I don't know. I
don't hate it because of the upside, but
yeah.
Again, it's the tight ends, man.
Yeah, it's so fluky. You know, speaking of fluky, tight end 5, Mr. Travis Kelce, drafted as the tight end 1, finishes as the tight end 5, 193 fantasy points, 97 receptions, 133 targets, 823 yards, 3 touchdowns, 6.19 yard per target, 8.48 yards per catch. First half of the year, he was the tight end 5. Second half of the year is the tight end 4. Not really what you wanted from your second round pick, right? And was really mid from week 12 through the playoffs. Like, you know, I guess the question, Wu, is like, is this it? Is this the end of Travis Kelce, the man?
I think it is the end of him being the man. What I will say in his defense, I guess, is like Kansas City showed all year they don't care about how many points they score. They're just going to go win the game.
Yeah.
You know, they're not trying to put up 30-something points a game, and they're going to, blow you off the field. Like, they're going to win tight games, and they find ways to win every single time. So that translates to, down years in production fantasy-wise, like even with Mahomes.
Right.
Kelce was a victim of that. He's definitely not – he's still very good, going to be one of the better tight ends in the NFL-wise. Fantasy-wise, I'm not seeing him in that conversation anymore.
Yeah. I think you really need to see Kansas City take a step forward or go back to their, high-flying, throw the ball over the yard kind of thing in order to see something for Travis Kelce. But, Travis Kelce is also 35 years old, going to be 36 when somewhere in the middle of the season. I think we just sit back and like revel on the career that was Travis Kelce. You know what I mean? Like,
unbelievable.
The man was insane. Was the tight end 1 from 2016 to 2020, which is an insane run. And then also, tight end 2 in 2022 or 21, and then 2022 is a tight end 1. I think this is it for our guy Travis Kelce. I know for myself, unless I start to see some moves in the offseason with Kansas City, I don't think I'm going to invest in someone like Travis Kelce. So we'll see.
Yeah, tip of the cap to Kelce, man. What a run, but
yeah.
Your time's over.
Absolutely. So I don't know if there's even maybe you can sell him on the name.
Yeah, I was just going to say the name's going to be what gets it for you.
Like if you're in Dynasty right now, I'm going to look right now, see what he's valued at.
If you could get any kind of pick for him, I'd be happy.
Yeah, hold on. Let me just double check the databases and see what if anyone's getting out on Kelce right now, what they're
like
getting
a pick
for.
and a young receiver.
Yeah. So here's one with a couple of picks. Kind of hard to tell, but Travis Kelce in a 2027 third for Jake Ferguson, a 27 third, and the 306 this year. This is a bunch of garbage. Travis Kelce and the 105, this year's 105 for the 103.
Wow.
A little interesting.
Yeah, you get to move up.
Yeah. I like this one. This one could be interesting. Travis Kelce and the 106 for Isaiah Likely and the 205.
That I like.
That one's good. I honestly, what side are you on that one?
I mean, if you can get Likely a younger tight end option.
Yeah.
It depends on how, are you sure that it's not Mark Andrews anymore? Like, that's something you really need to consider because you're also, was it the 105 that you're giving up as well?
The 205.
Oh, you're giving up the 205 and getting Likely in.
No, you're giving up Kelce in the 106 and you're getting back Likely in the 205.
Yeah, so you're giving up the 106. You got to be sure that Likely is that dude in Baltimore.
I would honestly, I'm on the Travis Kelce side of this trade because he's probably not going to be anything great, but he's going to be manageable. And then with the 106, you could probably get someone like Tyler Warren.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, and there's your future right there. But
yeah, I like that.
Moving into tight end 4. Tight end 4, this guy? Really?
Yeah. Putting a smile on my face.
Mr. Jonnu Smith of the Miami Dolphins, drafted as a tight end 28, 220 fantasy points, 88 receptions on 111 targets, 884 yards and 8 touchdowns, 7.96 yards per target, 10.05 yards per catch, First half he was the tight end 17. Second half he was the tight end 1. Woo, I know you had him, so I'm gonna defer to you.
Yeah, so my dynasty team's pretty weak at tight end. I have the Muth. I drafted Musgrave, for a second there. I thought I found my next, young tight end. He was ripping in Green Bay, and all of a sudden Kraft comes in. And Musgrave is non-existent. I drafted Jatavion Sanders in Carolina, but he was on my taxi squad. So this year I was pretty much getting crushed at tight end. And, dynasty waivers, there's really nothing out there. No. So, I'm kind of looking one day. I'm like, let's see, what kind of options I have for tight end, even if it's just somebody I hope scores a touchdown that week. And there's Jonnu Smith just sitting there. I'm like, whatever. I'll pick him up. It's Miami. Mike McDaniel is a creative guy. Maybe he gets somebody involved.
Sure.
But when I picked him up, I had no idea he was going to be the tight end 4.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he set the franchise record for receiving yards by a tight end or something like that.
I don't know, but if any year that was going to happen, it could have been this year.
Yeah, it was
the man just ripped.
Yeah, crazy. I don't know, and I don't even know what the change was from the first half to the second half. That Mike McDaniel was like, we got to get this guy involved, but my man went on a historic run. For Jonnu Smith, weeks 11 to 16 was the tight end 2, 3, 3, 5, 2, 10. I don't know.
I lied. I picked him up in August. So the season hadn't even started yet.
Oh, so you called your shot.
I guess so. My eyes were closed Babe Ruth style because I had no idea. Oh, my God.
Right?
Terrell, I know you're sick right now. Dropped him in May. Sorry.
Unbelievable. 19 red zone targets, which is insane. 8 touchdowns. I don't know if you see him get up to eight touchdowns again.
That was a lot.
He did have 8 in 2022, and then the next season he only had 1. You know what I mean? Questions, that you kind of think about, did Waddle missing 2 games affect this, and how
not
he
enough
was,
apparently.
Yeah, right, not enough. But then future outlook for Jonnu Smith, it's like, are we sure that he can repeat this? I mean, you are seeing Tyreek Hill probably gone. It's not been official yet as of February 16th, but I think all signs point to Tyreek Hill leaving. So maybe you see Jonnu Smith get involved a little bit more, and they rely on him. But I don't know.
I'm checking his contract situation right now. I'm pretty sure he's got maybe 1 more year.
I was gonna say he does turn 30 next year, so and even 30 isn't a big glaring number for tight ends like it is for running backs and wide receivers, but he is getting up there in age, and it's like, what's the true value for someone like Jonnu Smith?
Yeah, and when I'm starting him, I'm not expecting him to average 10, or I am expecting him to average 10 points a game. But there was games where he's putting up 25 and 19. I'm not expecting that every single week. If somebody comes to me this offseason and wants Jonnu Smith, I'll probably trade him. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that right now. So that probably just ruined all my leverage. But I mean, whatever. What was I gonna get for him anyways?
I'm looking at some of these on Keep Trade Cut. Someone trade Jonnu Smith for Rashad White. I'd smash that all day long.
Yeah, who's got Rashad White? Let me know.
Yeah, right. Jonnu Smith for a 2026 first round pick. Do
I have to start shopping this guy?
Right. Oh my
Jesus.
God. We'll see. I don't know. Going into our tight end 3, Mr. George Kittle. George Kittle was drafted as the tight end 6, finishes as the tight end 3. 237 fantasy points, 78 receptions on 94 targets, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. You love to see that. 11.77 yards per target, 14.16 yards per catch. First half of the year, he was the tight end 2. Second half of the year, he was the tight end 5. I want to say that this is the product of not having Christian McCaffrey, because when you think about how dynamic of a player Christian McCaffrey is and where he makes his money, those short crossers over the middle, it's exactly what George Kittle does. And now you take McCaffrey out of it and Ayuk, right? And Kittle is kind of almost like your main man. Yes, Debo was still there, but it wasn't himself. Juwan Jennings kind of came on, and Ricky Pearsall wasn't even there for that long either. But I think I want to say this is the best year that we've seen from Kittle. Let me just double check his career stats.
He had a tight end 2 year, but that was only with 180 fantasy points. So in terms of 2018 he had 214. Okay. But within recent years, definitely his best year.
And I know health has been a big issue for Kittle, but honestly, the past 4 years, 14 games, 15 games, 16 games, 15 games, he's really starting to come on.
And even with that 2018 year, he's a tight end 3, 214 fantasy points. It was on 136 targets. This year he only had 94, so he's being more efficient with that.
Absolutely. So yeah, definitely the second highest touchdowns finish of his career. Most red zone targets of his career, 21, which you love to see. But future outlook for someone who's George Kittle, I will say he's going to be pushing 32 years old. Debo's gone, so that is a positive. Other than injury, there is no signs of decline in him athletically. So I think he might be someone that you go down with the ship.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. That San Fran offense, it was a year out of hell. They'll be fine next year. I think Kittle starts to step into that conversation of, and replace Travis Kelce of, those upper echelon. Not that he wasn't already, but it just takes a name out of his way for him to get up there.
To move up. Yeah. But these next two tight ends I'm very excited to talk about. More especially this one right here, tight end number 2, Mr. Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals. He was drafted as the tight end 3, finishes as the tight end 2, 250 fantasy points, 111 receptions on 147 targets, 1,146 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 7.8 yards per target, 10.32 yards per catch. First half of the year, he was the tight end 4. Second half of the year, he was the tight end 2. I just want to point out that in our Dynasty League on August 14th, I shot my shot, and I made a trade and acquired Trey McBride. My thought process behind it was, he came on really strong in the second half of last year with Kyler Murray, and Kyler Murray was coming off the ACL, but he had monster targets in the second half of the year with him. They draft Marvin Harrison Jr. He is a rookie, but McBride was even if Harrison was the number 1 target in this offense, he's the number 2 target. And you want to target good offenses, in Arizona having Kyler Murray being dynamic, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride. I shot my shot, and it worked out in my favor, and I'm really happy with having Trey McBride now for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it took him until what was that, like week 16 to score a touchdown?
Yeah, I think week 17,
and he only finishes 13 total points behind Brock Bowers. Like, can you imagine if he scored a couple more times? We're talking about the tight end 1.
Yeah, and tight end touchdown regression or touchdown progression kind of goes both ways. Like, you could totally see, even like if he has these same 111 receptions and 1,100 yards, and he gets like 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns, like that's insane.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So I think the future for Trey McBride is very, very bright. He had a 29% target share. You did see Marvin Harrison take a step back. Honestly, even if Marvin Harrison Jr. takes a step forward, it's
just more eyes on him now.
Yeah, but I believe Trey McBride is the focal point of this offense because, not for nothing, Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. don't have that great kind of connection. McBride and Murray definitely do, So I'm not afraid of Marvin Harrison Jr. going forward, especially as someone who's the Trey McBride manager. He's a top tier tight end, and if there's any way for you to acquire him, I would go ahead and do it.
Absolutely. 9 targets per game as a tight end. That's just a number you love to see on top of the target share number, on top of the 21 red zone targets. Like, it wasn't a matter of, it took him a while to score, but it wasn't because they weren't looking for him. It's just bad luck.
Absolutely. And, he's not like Laporta or, the next guy we're going to talk about where he just bursts on the scene and, was elite. He kind of took his time, and he was definitely a highly touted tight end out of Colorado State, but he kind of sat behind Zach Ertz for a couple of years, and honestly, I think sitting behind him those years really helped him. And if you were someone like me who went for McBride, he kind of floated underneath the radar, and you were able to capitalize and acquire him
for sure.
So, all right, we're gonna round it out, ladies and gentlemen, with the tight end 1, the freak of nature himself, Mr. Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers, tight end 9, or drafted as a tight end 9, and he's a tight end 1 as a rookie. I don't know where these tight ends are coming from, but I'm all for it.
Yeah.
263 fantasy points, 112 receptions on 153 targets, 1,194 yards and 5 touchdowns, 7.8 yards per target, 10.66 yards per catch. First half of the year, he was the tight end 1. Second half of the year, he was the tight end 3. What do you want? You know what I mean? Another rookie tight end just, coming, bursting onto the scene, finishing number 1 overall.
I don't even know why I'm surprised because he was insane at Georgia.
Yeah, I remember as a true freshman, they were talking about this guy
just running people over nonstop.
Yeah, and it was just it was just waiting his time until he came into the NFL. And obviously I think when Las Vegas drafted him, everyone kind of scratched their head. But
I think at that point it was just best player available.
I was gonna say you don't pass on generational talent, and Brock Bowers is a generational talent.
Clearly,
gave you massive boom weeks. Week 4, he gave you 20+ points. Week 2, he gave you 30+ points. He had a 26% target share in Las Vegas with the combination of all of those quarterbacks. He was still able to put it together. 9 targets per game. You love to see that. But,
yep.
That's awesome to see.
Let's get this man a quarterback, please.
Yeah.
Will they pick 6th?
They are. So, and obviously some popular mocks have, Shedeur Sanders going there. I think that actually works very well. We haven't gotten into the details of quarterbacks, but Shedeur is someone who plays the short game a lot, and I think Bowers can really benefit from that, and Shedeur could, benefit from having, Bowers on his team. But I don't think you're able to acquire someone like Brock Bowers because he's been such that generational talent, and in the first year he becomes a tight end 1. Good luck.
Yeah, no, you're crazy if you trade away this guy.
Yeah,
crazy. I'm gonna say it again, but it's the tight end position. It's just weak overall. There's only a select few guys who can really dominate for you. So when you have one, do not give it up.
Yeah, you got to, and we'll see what the what these rookies come in with,
because it's just a huge advantage every single week. Anytime that manager is coming up against you and they see the huge discrepancy between your 2 tight ends, it automatically just puts the pressure on. And
I don't mean to go back to Trey McBride, but that was my thought process when trying to trade for him. In order to be successful in fantasy football, you got to find those difference makers. And if someone's giving you, like Bowers, 9 targets a game, you know what I mean? The probability of them having, boom weeks are, greater than someone like, Hunter Henry, who we talked about at the beginning of this episode. You want to get someone who is talented and is going to get the work, and, that there's your success.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, episode 6 of the Fourth and Fantasy podcast has now concluded. We finished our year in review.
Wow.
The series is done.
It's crazy.
We're not done though.
Not even close.
We next episode we're going to talk about the potential free agents and combine or predictions, but then after that we get into rookies, man, and I'm so excited. I've been grinding some tape, and I'm ready to talk about these rookies and get ready for these rookie drafts.
I got some thoughts, man.
Some
thoughts.
Hold them in, because
I know,
because when we have those episodes, those are going to be bangers.
Oh my god.
Ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that you're following us on all of our socials. Twitter at Fourth and Fantasy Pod, Instagram and TikTok at Fourth and Fantasy, YouTube Fourth and Fantasy Pod, just Fourth and Fantasy. But give us a like when those social clips come out. Give us a comment. Give us something to talk about. And maybe we can help you out. Going forward.
Yeah, ask some questions. It gives us something to talk about. Helps you out, and it's another way for us to think. For our own fantasy league. So it benefits all of us.
Absolutely. All right, we'll see you on the other side.
See ya.